Final project, I chose the Goodreads 10K dataset, which contains book ratings on a scale of 1 to 5 for 10,000 books by 53,000 users. So the data is in two CSV files. One CSV file contains the ratings data, another CSV file contains the information about the books. So first, I inspected the ratings data set, and I saw that there are 6 million ratings, and there are 3 columns. So over here you can see a snapshot. So there's user ID, book ID, and then rating corresponding to each book for a user. So, and the rating is on a scale of 1 to 5, and both the median and the mean are pretty close to 4, which tells me that in general books are rated pretty highly. So now let's take a look at the books data set. There are 10,000 books and 23 columns. So there are lots of information about the books, such as, author, title, publication year, ratings information. So let's just kind of take a look at the data. For instance, here are the top 10 highest rated books. Interestingly enough, if you take a look at these titles, they all seem to be part of a series. None of these books are standalone. So next I wanted to take a look at the highest number of ratings. So not necessarily the highest rated books, but books that, a lot of people read, and, they left enough of an impression that they felt the need to leave a rating. So this list looks very different in that it just instantly recognizable as a list with a lot of bestsellers on it. So a lot of really popular things like Harry Potter, Twilight, Hunger Games, The Hobbit, so things like that. So then I wanted to take a look at the highest number of 1-star rated books. And that's kind of an interesting list because the average rating still seems fairly high. It's not it's not 4 or 5 stars, but it's not 1, 2 stars either. So, and also very interestingly, this list includes both my least favorite book of all times, Lord of the Flies, which I read in high school and was extremely traumatized by, and it includes, all 4 books from the Twilight series, which I really enjoy. If you've only seen the movie, please don't judge me. The books are much better. So the next thing I wanted to see if there's any connection between the publication year and the average ratings. So I limited my data to only the books published from the 1800 until now. And just by looking at the data, it seems like up until 2000, books mostly have ratings over 3.5. So they're much fewer books, but they seem to be rated higher. So in our data set between 2000 and our current date, the quantity of books seem to have gone up significantly, but most of the books with the rating below 3.5 have been published after 2000. So that's kind of an interesting observation about quantity versus quality. So I wanted to see if there's any connection between language and average rating. And it seems like there is. There are a lot of very highly rated books in a foreign language. So for instance, you see over here, like we have Turkish, we have Japanese, and I also wanted to see if there's any difference between British English and U.S. English. And yes, I suspected the British English would be rated more highly, and that seems to be the case. And finally to the recommendations. So I converted the data to the real ratings matrix in order to do the analysis. Just kind of looked at the average ratings, and you can see that a lot of 4-5 star ratings over here. So I had to limit my data a little bit to make the calculations more manageable. So I randomly selected 30% of the data. And also, in order to improve the quality of the recommendations, I removed any users who rated less than 50 books and any books that had less than 100 ratings. So then I split the data into test and train using the 75-25% split. And then I finally compared four methods for recommendations. So SVD, item-based collaborative filtering, user-based collaborative filtering, and popular. And here are my results. So looking at the RMSE, it seems like SVD, UBCF, and popular very close, and item-based collaborative filtering had the highest RSME. But what I observed was that SVD took the shortest time. So even though the RMSE was a little higher, I would still prefer this method over UBCF and popular because of the amount of time that it saves. And finally, as a last thing, I made some predictions about the top 10 list for a user. And here are the books that my recommender came up with. So if you look at the titles column over here, it curiously looks very much like my high school English curriculum. So imagine that proves the validity that these are the books that are part of the high school curriculum, so they're recognized as important works of literature. But also there are a couple of surprising things on here, like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I think is an example of a book written with a lot of old English humor, a lot of absurd events happening. So I think it's very interesting that that this book showed up on the list with things like To Kill a Mockingbird and Of Mice and Men. So perhaps people who enjoy books, kind of philosophical, classical books such as these, also enjoy the sarcastic old English humor. So there might be a connection there. So yeah, that's it.